All right, everyone, let's get the show started. Welcome to Office Hours. It's April 8th, 2020. My name is Eric Osterman, and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the CEO and founder of Cloud Posse. We're a DevOps accelerator. We help startups own their infrastructure in record time by building it for you and then showing you the ropes. For those of you new to the call, the format is very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered. So feel free to unmute yourself at any time if you want to jump in and participate. If you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by going to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/office hours. We host these calls every week. We'll automatically post a video recording of this session to the Office Hours channel on Slack, as well as follow up with an email so you can share it with your team. If you want to share something in private, just ask and we can suspend the recording. With that said, let's kick things off. I don't really have any new talking points for today, so I think the main thing to cover will be getting your questions answered. Two things I didn't cover from last week's Office Hours. One was a link shared relating to the XY problem. This resonates with me a lot, so I really want to cover that if we get to it. And the other is announcing our SuiteOps discourse forum. So it's really popular these days for forums to have, or for communities to have a forum. This is a great place to have more long-form communication. Here's an example that was asked last week, asking about versioning secrets and versioning and deploying secrets and strategies for that. So I gave my 2 cents and had some interesting exchanges here. So if you have any more deeper, more involved questions, I really encourage you to open those up to the community by going to ask.suiteops.com and see you there. So let's turn the floor over. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to get answered? And remember to unmute yourself. We had a question that came up in Office Hours. I'm not sure if that person in the Office Hours channel, not sure if that person's on the call right now. Bits and Bytes, I don't know who that is. Are you on the call? Looks like they're not able to join on the Office Hours. You can ask it here, but it will be easier on the call. So it interactive. All right. Any questions related to Terraform, Kubernetes, recent events, any cool projects you've stumbled across in the past week or two that you'd like to share?
By the way, he didn't say that he couldn't join. He just can't join with video.
Oh, yeah. By the way, video totally optional. Thanks for. All right, so we'll see if he gets back. All right, so the XY problem. So this is something that comes up all the time when you're talking to people providing support. And you see it all the time, probably in our community Slack, you see it in forums, and people are asking questions about some really esoteric problem that they're encountering, and they want to know how to solve that problem. But they don't give the background or the use case that they're trying to solve, like the actual business case that they want to solve. They're actually asking for help on their solution to that problem. But maybe that's not even the right solution to begin with. So when we ask questions to things that we're working on, it's really important, I think, to first state the business case that you're trying to solve, or the problem you're trying to solve, describe your solution, and then your problem with that solution. Because that might, because people who've done this before might have other ways of approaching it entirely that might make it simpler, or other considerations that we haven't thought of. So does this resonate with anyone?
Every single day.
Yeah, completely.
Only on days that end in Y.
Hey, Zach. What interesting tools have you come across, Zach? You're always running into new things.
Oh, I don't know, man. I'm a tool bag. You don't ask me about tools. That's
Tool bag.
I'm more interested in what other people are using, actually. There's so many tools out there that are trying to figure out what people are actually using in production. KPT is one that I want to keep an eye on. That's one that Google has recently released for doing Kubernetes-based deployments.
Yep. Yeah, we talked briefly about
but
that last week.
yeah, that one looks pretty cool. So
Yeah, I ran it by Mumoshu, and yeah, he was obviously aware of it. His initial reaction was that he was a little underimpressed or underwhelmed by what it does right now. But it's early on.
that's actually really good to know. His initial impressions are usually pretty strong ones. So
yeah, it was and I don't want to throw him under the bus, and his was a cursory review as well, and that's not fair to any project owner, right? To have that. Apparent, so the way I looked at it when I saw the description of KPT was that it was basically a packager around customize, a way of distributing your customized templates in a way similar to Helm. But he said that's actually not his takeaway from what it is, and so I'm not sure.
I'll try to find some time to dig into it soon.
So let's see here. So Bits and Bytes shared this Commandeer, the desktop cloud IDE. Interesting. I wonder if this is like Lens by the company formerly known as Catena.
I actually checked out Lens. Lens was quite nice to play around with.
Lens is really nice. I use it regularly when working, more for like developer environments.
Oh.
Yeah, after Mr. Roth praised it so highly, I had to go check it out too. It's definitely very neat. So
yeah.
Well, if no one has anything, I might have a question for the team. Like,
fire away.
What tools are you guys using for like dependency management? Like, how do you know which current versions of dependencies you currently have deployed in which stage? So for me, like when I have something in production, an application, and it has Y dependencies, how are you keeping track of that, or are you at all? Do you find this information valuable?
Yeah, that's a good question. Before I answer, anybody want to speak up to this?
I'll try not to be opinionated until someone else answers. So.
All right, Zach. All right, so I'll share a little bit on this and a mea culpa on it. I feel like what we started doing wasn't the right thing and now I feel like we're doing more of the right thing. So dependency management or keeping track, there are two things here. I'd like to just say like keeping track of versions between environments is one question and dependency management is a separate question. So keeping track on versions between environments, I'll say what we were doing and I'll say why that didn't work and I'll say what we're doing today in our new engagement.
Awesome.
So what we were doing was keeping environments incredibly separated by Git repositories. Basically, AWS accounts represented more or less a runtime environment, an application. And then there'd be one repository per account. So this is one AWS account. And this is another AWS account, this is another AWS account, etc. And then the code there, when we wanted to promote a version of code from one environment to the next, we would update the version inside of the configuration folder. So like this is the CloudTrail module, and this is the module version that we're using here. So it's pinned to this release. So what's nice about it is you could never accidentally update one environment because they're strictly separated by GitHub repositories. And the way to promote a change between environments was to open that pull request in each account and do that. This sucks though when you want to make sure that environments stay up to date and you promote these changes consistently across the environment. The other problem is it's not easily orchestrated with a pipeline. So pipelines are awesome for promoting changes from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3 to stage 4, etc. So we've decided that this is not the right path moving forward. And that's why in our most recent engagements that we've done, we've moved to a different model. In our new model, we have a centralized repository with a configuration file per account or environment in that account. And then we have a pipeline that promotes that change between the environments, and we don't merge the pull request until that has percolated through all environments. And if it fails deployment in any environment, then that process changes. That way, you don't close, no change is left behind because the pull requests are never closed until it's been promoted everywhere. It's controversial in the sense that in traditional software development workflows, you typically deploy on merge to master. I don't think it's mutually exclusive, and that's still a possibility. But what happens if on merge to master at some point down the road, it fails in those subsequent pipelines? Now it's still back in your court to promote that change across all the environments, and that change might be left behind. So that's why I like this hard stance, hard knocks approach to using the pull request process that is not merged until it's gone into all the environments. Is that a clear process? I would like to show you the example of it, but I need to get permission first to do that.
No worries. The process was very clear. For me, it wasn't really about like applications, but more like about dependencies of like services. So let's say my package.json log file or my composer log file, and these kind of libraries that I have dependencies on. Because out of the security perspective, I need to know what is currently running in my cluster. Like having these applications, I usually just do a helm list and update, like see what I'm currently running for inside my cluster and outside. It's like, yeah.
So I hesitate to mention this because I think you already know, but for everyone else's thing, the other really nice thing is to use Dependabot, right? So Dependabot supports Terraform, supports Python and Java and probably 24+ languages out there. And what's nice about it is it automatically opens a pull request against your repository with those changes. So long as you have adequate testing on your side, it goes through the same pipeline of keeping your changes up to date. And you see that they're related kind of, because if you're open, if you have the former satisfied, what I described about not closing the pull request until it's been promoted to all environments. And then you have Dependabot, which opens a PR for an update to a package. And then because of your process, running it through that full pipeline for testing the changes, no change should be left behind, and dependency management should be more straightforward.
Yeah, okay.
So there's that. Now there's also like where you have more tightly coupled microservices and deployments. That's another kind of dependency management. Like how do you do complicated, tightly coupled deployments of, distributed monoliths, so to say, but that's maybe not the question you had either.
Yeah, I mean, for me right now, it's just hard to see what we currently have in production. And I mean, some of you know, I just switched companies like 2 months ago or 1 month ago. And the issue that I'm currently facing is that we still have some projects, a majority of projects running on PHP 5.
Yeah.
So I'm just like looking for a tool that basically says, hey, this stuff is all out of date. There's these security loopholes in there.
I see. Yeah.
So,
but so the other thing though, like, I don't know, I feel like they're different factors at play here. One is to satisfy security and compliance, and that's one view of the data. Then there's knowing just from your application perspective what's been deployed, and you don't care about the version of Nginx ingress there. You care about like that my API version 1.2.3 is running in this environment.
Yeah.
So one of our customers, they built a nice little internal dashboard that just shows you based on environment what's running. Also, if you happen to use CodeFresh has environments, the concept of environments. So it's a visual indicator on a dashboard, all your environments and what's running there.
Okay.
So this is what I'm talking about there. I'll post it to the Slack channel.
Awesome. I will take a look.
Yeah. All right. So Bits and Bytes has posted his question here. Let me see if I can get through this. So we are, well, okay, before I move on to that, Zach, any opinions on what I said or anything you'd like to add on the previous question?
No, man, everything you're saying is sort of where I ended up landing on a lot of it too. I would say with the microlith or the, whatever you're talking about, tightly coupled microservices, I ended up sort of, I'm falling in line with doing deployment repos specifically for an environment, for each environment, that then it's almost like a Docker Compose of sorts that has different, the tightly coupled versions of all the deployment pipelines that then would be rolled out to that particular environment. So it also sort of then allows you to do more GitOps type stuff too.
So the other thing is a really awesome thing that Mumoshu's working on for dependency management. It's a tool called Mod, and it lets you describe everything you want and supports Semver expressions to set the versions. And what's pretty rad about it is when you run Mod, it has built-in support for GitHub. So there's a argument here. Let's see. It was just posted in the variant channel this week. Let's see if I can find it. There's basically a flag you can pass to it, and it'll automatically open up a pull request against your repository with the updated versions. And what's rad about this, is it's generalized. It's not NPM specific. It's not Terraform specific. It's not Go specific. It's use this tool specific and update those dependencies based on GitHub. But as you can see, we've been very active in this channel this week. So I haven't found it yet.
No worries, but I will take a look.
But yeah, check out the variant channel. Scroll up to like April 1st or 2nd, I think, and you'll find it. All right, let's go back to the Office Hours channel and get the next question answered here. So Bits and Bytes writes, so we are trying to deploy HA-RabbitMQ deployment using Rancher and Kubernetes and Docker. We cannot open up the port for RabbitMQ WebSockets, or at the very least, it will not connect to the port 15674. The load balancer is landing on the proper port, but will not forward to the proper port. It does not detect anything on the other end. It's not HTTP, and the interesting thing is the admin section of RMQ is HTTP, and it works. This is TCP, and we use WebStomp client library. We see the port is open, but the ingress load balancer will not connect. We tried to strip it down, no luck, basically 503. So we tried different ingresses like HA proxy traffic as well, logged in from the console, but it didn't work, following the RMQ instructions very closely. So what's not clear to me is if you're having a service deployed as type load balancer, and if you're on AWS or not. I assume you're on AWS.
Yeah. That's not clear from the question. Are you using the HTTP load balancer?
Yeah.
And that'll never work, right?
Yes.
Because you're using TCP traffic.
Exactly. Yes.
So I can say the Helm chart works for me with RabbitMQ and HAR, high availability. So,
So why would the TCP answer 503 HTTP?
That's a good point. That's a good point. That's a good distinction there, Marcin. This is a telltale sign that something is wrong with the protocol setup. 503 is an HTTP status code, so something is not set up as TCP correctly. Also, if you're using a service in Kubernetes of type load balancer, you're going to also want to make sure that it's configured as a TCP load balancer or an NLB. Because otherwise it defaults to HTTP, and then you're going to be having this problem.
It sounds like he's trying to mix protocols across ports.
Yeah.
You can only...
Just one note on GCP, the default is TCP.
Okay.
AWS, I think it's HTTP.
Yeah, I think so.
He says
the
that
port is like weird to me. Like, which port is it? I'm not familiar with that in the context of RabbitMQ. But maybe I'm just wrong.
So 15672 is the normal AMQP port. I'm sorry, is the normal HTTP web interface. I'm not sure. I've never used 15674, but it sounds like he's using that for web sockets.
Yeah.
And then
and WebSockets is of course HTTP, but the other consideration there is you need to make sure that it's a TCP load balancer still, because WebSockets over ELB Classic don't work.
But here's what he said. He said the admin section, which is 15672, is HTTP and its port works. If he's creating a load balancer, he can't make different ports have different protocols. If he's making it listen on 15672 and 15674, if he sets one of them to HTTP, they're all going to be HTTP. He can't make the other one just be TCP.
Yeah, that's
at least on AWS.
And then the next thing is just questioning. Well, obviously, if you're using Rancher and you're deploying it this way and that's the requirement, go ahead. Just be aware that Amazon has their Amazon MQ, which is Apache MQ under the hood. So then you can run a fully managed MQ service with more or less the same protocols, and that might be advantageous, just like you would want to run RDS as opposed to running MySQL as a container.
So you just added its DigitalOcean and
oh, DigitalOcean.
Does like port forwarding work? Like if you just like port forward with kubectl?
Oh, running the kubectl proxy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Might be a good try to at least like cross out the provider specific logic.
That's a good tip. So what he's suggesting is run kubectl proxy to port forward that to your local host, just to eliminate DigitalOcean's load balancer as the culprit. If that's the culprit, if it works, then you know that DigitalOcean is the problem. If it doesn't work, then you know the Kubernetes service is probably the problem.
Oh yeah, I was just about to ask that. If you're using engine ingress, then it's a HTTP, right? So engine ingress has some configuration and config map that you can enable the TCP, but still it won't work with TCP traffic, right?
There's a setting there.
So I think what you're looking for is using the service with a type load balancer instead of using the ingress with Nginx ingress.
Yeah.
But I mean, like Nginx ingress supports WebSockets out of the box.
Yeah.
So I have used WebSockets not with RabbitMQ, but without RabbitMQ, like provided myself, and it works fine. Doesn't work by me.
Yeah. Sorry, Bits and Bytes, not able to give you a conclusive answer on this one. But would appreciate if you post back as soon as you get to the bottom of what your problem was, so we have a record of that and can help others in the future. All right, let's move on. Any other discussion points or questions?
It's just not clear to me what is WebStomp. What's the protocol there? Is it TCP or HTTP? Layer 7 or layer 4?
So I think he's running a TCP load balancer to Nginx, which is running HTTP WebSockets.
WebStomp is a TCP protocol that
WebStomp.
applications use to talk to messaging queues.
Okay, so if we have TCP load balancer and behind that is an Nginx ingress working on layer 7, and behind that we have a service that wants TCP, then we have mismatch of layers. We have one layer 7 in a sandwich of TCP protocol, right?
Yeah.
I mean, for me, he would not even need to route the RabbitMQ traffic through Nginx ingress. Like, I don't see a reason
it
for
shouldn't
it.
be exposed, right? Like, I mean, this should be just used internally with your services. But,
Yeah, the service should be type load balancer, and then it's fine. Instead of using like an ingress for it.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm mistaken on what he's trying to achieve.
Well, he may be trying to avoid resource overuse either. We've had issues in the past where all of our apps were creating their own load balancers, and we ran out of, we hit like max security group rules per security group issues. Although he may not have that issue on DigitalOcean. I don't really know anything about them.
Yeah, there's no security group rules on DigitalOcean.
All right.
I'm using DigitalOcean load balancer with RabbitMQ. And I'm just like exposing my service with as type load balancer instead of routing the WebSocket traffic through.
So in the chat, we have a question here. Jawad asks, anyone set up Nagios to send alerts to different Slack channels? Currently, all alerts for us are going to be to one alerts channel. So yeah, it's been ages since I've used Nagios, but I'm guessing that you would have different escalations, and those escalations each then go to a different channel. My guess is most people on the call right now are using probably Prometheus, an alert manager, or something like Datadog or Sysdig.
I'm guessing it's much easier on one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nagios is pretty old, so.
Yeah.
An oldie but goodie, but not.
Yeah, exactly.
Not what I'm using anymore. You know.
An oldie but goodie. It'll probably continue to be around forever, just like Jenkins.
There should be a war started after that, saying that Jenkins will be forever. But I don't see anyone protesting.
Yeah.
Jenkins is pretty good. I can start the war.
Shots were fired across our bow. Yeah. No, I'm. I did a little bit of an exploration on Jenkins earlier this year, and I was actually pleasantly surprised by the current state of Jenkins and where it's at. So long as you concede to installing, 35 plugins per base install.
And that part can be really hard to automate out, so without some other tooling. So
yeah, this was
everything can be automated in Jenkins. Installation of plugins, creation of users, doing the matrix authentication and permissions, stuff like that.
I really liked Jenkins Job Builder, so that was pretty cool for building out a ton of pipelines. So
what I was frustrated with, or like the biggest blocker I encountered, was building a container in one step and then running that container in the next step under Kubernetes, and there's like no way to do that.
Start looking at Tecton for that stuff, right?
Yeah. And then we're saying like Jenkins X, which is totally right.
which uses Tecton, right? So,
Yeah.
What was the problem with building the container? Did you use Kubernetes to build containers?
Yeah, but so the way that it's defined in Kubernetes is it uses a pod spec template, and that pod spec template needs to have the containers before it starts the pod that you use to run the steps in your pipeline. So if one step is creating the container and the next step is using that container, you can't create a pod spec that describes that. It would need to be a separate physical pipeline.
Okay.
I actually was quite pleasantly surprised how well GitLab works, like GitLab CI. I was really afraid in the beginning, but like after spending some time with it at work now, it's actually quite good. Like
Deployed as a Helm chart under Kubernetes?
Yep.
no, right now for me not. We are using normal on-prem, but we are switching to the SaaS offering. But yeah, the general like how the pipeline works, how like you add workers and stuff, it's super nice and easy. I was really surprised.
Oh, yeah, it was David who asked last week's office hours, I think, David Scott, about how to run GitHub Actions under Kubernetes.
Oh,
And this is a tricky one, right? But lo and behold, Mumoshu is working on that. He's building a service to run GitHub Actions as first-class citizens under Kubernetes.
but
So,
triggered from GitHub or somewhere else?
Yeah,
Oh,
triggered.
that's amazing. That's cool.
Because there's they released their self-hosted runners.
Oh, I didn't see that. Okay.
Oh yeah, they did. But the self-hosted runners don't work under Kubernetes for most use cases that we would want to use it. Building a container.
Can you share the link?
Yeah, I'll reshare that again. So yeah, and they're looking for testers for this, beta testers. So
Awesome. I will take a look.
all right. So yeah, that was that project, which was pretty rad. Any other questions?
Bytes and Bits had another question regarding fan out.
Fan out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you see it on your screen?
Oh, you post, wait, or?
Yeah, a bit up, and then there it is, like right before you send the link.
Oh, okay.
Did I make...
I don't
there,
see.
it's all there. Your mouse is
Where your
there.
mouse is.
Oh, there. Thank you.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. I gotta zip my mouth in this one. I don't know anything about it. Anybody familiar with fan out? Powers streaming APIs. Push data to browsers, mobile apps, IoT devices, and partners. Real-time data everywhere. Yeah, sorry, can't. It doesn't seem like anyone on the call is familiar with fan out. So he asked because with all this RabbitMQ config issues, we've always had a plan to wait for Kafka to remove the zookeeper requirement and then
you'll be waiting forever, I think. On
I
that.
was just like, nope.
Yeah. You'll be waiting until you'll be in your grave and then when that happens. So.
Why do you think that is, Zach?
I don't know, dude. Zookeeper seems to never die. It's there forever. So.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's like such a. As much as people rag about Zookeeper from a Kafka perspective, it's really kind of a background item, and I mean it's just used for the clustering aspect, and it's rare to have issues with it. Obviously, if there are issues, there's issues with your whole Kafka cluster, but It's not as bad as people make it seem. That's all. So,
Does console support the Zookeeper protocol?
probably. It's sort of they're sort of competing in that realm though, right? Aren't they sort of,
I mean, they do the same thing, but that's why I was wondering if you could, like, you might already be depending on console, and then maybe that fits the bill. But yeah, doesn't maybe seem like it.
I actually did not even hear that like Kafka wants to remove the zookeeper dependency. Like,
I thought they were going to just build it into Kafka. No?
Yeah, I mean, there was the talk about it. I mean, the last time I was working with Kafka was beginning of 2019. So, but yeah, might be that they've changed course since then.
Foundation DB.
Not me.
Sounds like you are working on a lot of things over there and pushing the
Man.
envelope on
A whole lot.
Yeah. That's very cool stuff, though.
I was gonna say I'm a little jealous. So.
Yeah. You're stealing the thunder from Zachary, who's usually the one making my head spin.
Has any one of you guys deployed Neo4j in Kubernetes already and tried to get it running?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
Neo4j.
I deployed
data.
that. Yeah.
But inside Kubernetes or like with the ARM charts? Do they work?
It's okay in Kubernetes. It's the port requirements for accessing the client's ridiculously weird. So
why? It's just 2 ports, right?
yeah, it just, I don't know, it overcomplicates it. It's not
Okay.
as easy as you'd think it would be. So
okay.
But it's once you get it running, there's nothing to it. So I think I set up mine with a load balancer because of it. I forget.
Okay, I see. Yeah, Neo4j is an amazing tool for graph databases. But yeah.
It implements a graph database, or it's a tool for graph databases?
It is a graph database.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll try to get my Helm file for it out there at some point. I have way too many of them just sitting here unpublished, so.
So Bits and Bytes says that he's played a bit with Neo4j, and it's great. Heavy lock-in and quite expensive. We're going with Janus Graph, AWS and IBM using Janus Graph based on old Titan. It is a GDB.
Graph database.
Query graph database. Okay, it's a Gremlin query lang is great. Yeah, I have to say this is not an area of expertise for me, so I don't know.
Yeah, I just
what language are you speaking there, dude? Because swearing at
me. Oh, that's what this has come down to. So Michael asks, any contact have a contact specific script for notifications? A contact per channel, a script and destination channel as an argument to a script, same as we did 15 years ago, but for IRC. Any contact have a contact specific script? Yeah, so we have a CLI that we use for sending notifications.
And he was referring to my Nagios question, I think.
Okay. So this might be helpful for the Nagios stuff. GitHub Cloud Posse. We have a Slack notification CLI that we use. We use this predominantly with pipelines, but it works anywhere you want to send notifications to Slack. use the Slack notifier, and it's just a little go cli. It takes all of its arguments through environment variables so that it makes it easy to construct nice Slack messages like that. And then you can send those messages to any channel. You can control all aspects of this. You can control the color of the sidebar, the columns, the titles of the sections, all of that stuff. I'll link to the Slack notifier here. So, and if you go to releases, there's just a binary that you can download cross-compiled for every architecture.
Do you also have a Docker image?
We might have a Docker image. I think we do. Let's see here.
There's a Docker file in there, but
Yeah,
do you
Docker
publish it
file.
somewhere?
Yeah, so we've published a Docker image for that then to Cloud Posse / Slack notifier is my guess.
Okay.
Let's hub.docker.com/ what is it? Cloud Posse. There we go. Yeah. So there's the Docker image for that. No, I mean, we still maintain it. There's just it's such a simple app. We haven't needed to add anything.
For
to
sure.
it.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
Cool. Any other questions?
So I had posted something earlier about a tool that a couple of SREs in our company have put up on GitHub. It's up in the office hours channel a little ways.
Let's see here. Where's the?
I see a big orange logo that's keep going.
Here.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
So it's a command line utility called Stem, and it's really just a simple framework that's designed to this first thing. A simple flow is I would do Stem vault login, and it creates a local vault token. It does a vault login for you. I can do a Stem deploy and then tell it. I'll have a file of stem.deploy.yaml that will specify environments and instances, and it will find a Helm chart and run a local deploy script, or it'll run a local deploy shell script to then do whatever you need, which is usually a Helm deploy. It's something that's pretty specific to a lot of the things that we do. We find that like in Jenkins, we tend to do folders, and the only thing that that folder has is credential-wise is something that allows it to log into Vault. And then that allows it to get all the secrets out of Vault and then deploy our Helm chart.
You know what I think would be really rad that you should add here? I think you should add in a video at the top that just shows you using it.
Yeah.
To give additional context. But the gist of it seems to make sense to me. It's something that Zach and I are both working on independently, like for projects and stuff. We haven't open sourced anything, but it's cool. This idea that you have packs, I saw here, Stim packs. So looks like a way of bundling applications in a consistent way.
Seems very familiar to the kubectl plugin type method. I know nothing about the packs. That's
Okay.
been added recently.
Yeah.
Just thought I'd throw it out there. Somebody else might find that useful.
That is cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I'm going to share this at least internally with one of my guys working on something related to this. He might dig it.
Yeah, I took a look at that, and I look at the company, and they've just got a ton of content out there that's really kind of cool to look over. They've created a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Let's check that out. Yeah, 34 repositories. Anything else here you'd like to point out?
So we are web and video conferencing company, so we tend to have a lot of stuff around VoIP and SIP and stuff like that. We run things on Cube that are, you know, that makes sense to run on Cube. But a lot of the stuff is around integrating older apps and making it deployable and runnable on Cube.
Still very cool. A lot of stuff's released. So
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other stuff that we do that is just regular old open source projects that, I mean, you know, we don't fork everything that we use and keep a local repository, but this is the specific stuff that we didn't find an example of or an answer to out there.
That's cool. Yeah, another good thing to have on our radar. Thanks for sharing. Also, if you want to promote that project, and this goes for anyone else, if you have some project that you're working on, go ahead and share it always in the community projects folder here. So here's kind of like where you can keep an eye on projects whose owners are actually in our Slack team. So it's nice to have that direct line to the authors of the software. Cool. Any other questions?
I just also posted a snippet in Slack where it's so simple, but it just sets the app version to the current deployed one of the chart YAML, which like makes like so much stuff easier to look at when you're debugging stuff and tracking down other things. It's in the office hours, like up there above that one.
Oh, this here. Just a little snippet that I learned to love. Makes Helm lists so much nicer to look at.
And what this basically does is just that in the YAML, the value of app version to, in my case, the Docker image tag. But if you deploy your services, because like this is like a universal field, and previously I never used it. Like I just left it hard-coded, always the same. And now I said it is.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, you're using, so what this is saying is, well, this YQ here is writing or updating the app version to this environment variable of Docker image, right?
Correct. And right after that, I do Helm upgrade.
Yeah.
And basically, my Helm list looks like much nicer now. It's just like a little snippet. Maybe some of you are already doing that, but for me, it makes stuff so much easier because previously either developers didn't update it or never worked. So for now, it's quite amazing.
Nice trick. We've been using YQ for this as well. In our case, mostly with like maybe manipulating YAML for a Helm file. But for those of you not familiar, YQ is the equivalent of JQ, more or less, but for YAML. So if you want to manipulate your YAML without a bunch of set expressions that are optimistic at best, then YQ is your best bet. There are also a few implementations of YQ. The one by Mike Farah is the best one. We've looked at the different ones. It's also written in Go, and it's a small little binary you can just deploy. We distribute this version of YQ as well with the Cloud Posse packages distribution for Alpine Linux.
I have to say I'm a little embarrassed that I just realized that I'm not using the YQ write function. I cat the file and pipe it through YQ and to some temporary file and then change that and you know, then all in one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have a different one for JSON as well with JQ, but that one, like YQ, looks much nicer to use. So for me, for like sending stuff to Slack notifications, this is currently what I'm doing, which is super ugly compared to how YQ works. But in my queue, I have a file in the queue, I don't have a file. Basically, what this just does is post a message to our changelog in Slack. At least generates the JSON for that.
Nice. Yeah. That'd be another nice thing, just sharing snippets of cool little hacks like this. I'm sure we all have them.
I didn't know you could set arguments on
I
the
also
command
didn't
line.
know. I also didn't know, but it works. Like I just found it out 2 weeks ago or last week.
That's
So any
nice.
other
Yeah,
ones that I have?
you're defining an argument called channel, you're using it here, and then setting the value of channel. That's nice.
Yeah, because I could not use the environment variables down there because it's in quotes, and then like quotes and bash are quite. Yeah.
Gets around all the ugly unquoting and requoting and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right, we are nearing the end of the hour here. So if there are any final questions, let's get answered before we begin to wrap things up.
Maybe show the discussion. I like what is in there. You explained it briefly, but is there already something posted there? Something cool to look at?
Any new cool projects, you mean?
And the discourse forum, I mean.
Oh, yeah. That's actually not a bad thing to add to the agenda either. I like that. What we should probably do is do that as part of the calls. So there was at least one post in there. I think it's going to take a little while before we develop the same kind of critical mass that we have in Slack and to do the same thing in Discourse. But this question came up actually about a few days after we had the similar conversation in office hours. So I posted a video link to the office hours discussion here where we start talking about it at 46 minutes into it. But the question was how to version and deploy secrets in a CICD friendly manner. And Drupal goes through his requirements and their current implementation, and it's just kind of like soliciting feedback for what do you like about what he's doing, what could he do differently. And he's following a pretty common pattern where he uses encrypted Git secrets, and he points out what some of the good and bad things are with that approach. What I don't like about this Git process for rolling out secrets is it's not opaque. Obviously, right? I mean, we can't have opaques. We can't have clear secrets in clear text in the Git, and that's what we're trying to solve. But the subtlety here is that somebody needs to first of all have the private key to re-encrypt all the secrets, or the public key to encrypt just new secrets in a separate file, for example. Neither of which is a solution I like that much. The other is that when you're encrypting those secrets, what's to say that somebody didn't make an honest mistake with the formatting of that file, and now it doesn't parse correctly, or maybe you typo the value, you fat finger something and you break one of the secrets in there, and then you deploy that. You're not going to be able to catch all that through this process, and I don't like that.
Yeah, what I really don't like about it is, like, for example, at an old workplace I had, someone actually committed on accident some real secrets on a merge request, and then everyone could see them. So, like,
right.
it's very error
prone, right? And there's no recourse when that happens. And when that happens, you suddenly need to now go rotate, a half dozen or 24 secrets for everything, and that's no fun. So I think there are better approaches available today. One of the approaches I really like is, if you're using Kubernetes, is to use, there's many of these, but one of them is like the AWS secrets operator by Mimoshu. There's the external secrets operator, and then there's some other operator by GoDaddy, I forget. All of them work more or less the same and provide a way for you to use backing services as the system of record for your secrets, but then expose them in the cluster in a way that they're consumable by your pods.
Cool.
And this is also now, we're now onto our second engagement where we're using this pattern, and it's working a little bit better.
Awesome.
I use that in Azure as well, so it's, you can use it across providers, and there's tools for every single provider out there. So
Yeah. Which operator are you using for Azure?
oh, there's a vault operator for it that you can use
Okay.
for the key vault, and it was
Okay.
by a third party, but it worked really well. You just put in a very specifically formatted environment variables, and they'll be injected in via an init container that gets added in the moment it's deployed. So
Yeah.
pretty cool.
So I'd like to take this opportunity just to say, like, if anybody else is doing something and they'd like to solicit like general feedback, I think this is a great venue or forum for that, to post into discourse here, what you're doing, and if you want to get some candid, constructive criticism or tips on what to do there.
Awesome. I like the idea. Like Slack is nice and stuff, but like having a record with the forum where you can look up and go back like also a couple of months, is quite nice.
Yeah. The other thing, if this is a mental blocker for those to sign, you can get started super easily. We integrate with Slack, so you can log in with your SuiteOps Slack username. You can log in with your GitHub username. You can log in with your LinkedIn, or you can create a new account if you want to do it that way. So it's just the really low barrier to entry to start being a participant in SuiteOps.
Awesome.
All right, guys. I will get to the next, wrap things up here then. All right, so everyone, we've reached the end of the hour. That about wraps things up. Remember to register for our weekly office hours. If you haven't already, go to cloudposse.com/office hours to sign up, and you'll get a calendar invite in your email box so you can keep these in mind for the future. Again, thanks everyone for sharing your answers. I always learn so much from these calls. Today I learned a little bit about graph databases, very little. A recording of this call will be posted to the Office Hours channel and syndicated to our podcast at podcast.cloudposse.com. So if you ever can't make it, you can always just go there and listen to the latest Office Hours, and we're posting them there. We have our Office Hours going back ever since, I think, December or November on there. So if you want to catch up, you can go there. Thanks again, and see you all next week, same time, same place.
Bye.
Thank you.
By the